The day my husband told me he was filing for divorce, he thought he was ending my world. He had no idea he was actually beginning the systematic destruction of his own. The smell of coffee and the faint sound of cartoons from the living room. That was how my world used to begin every morning for 12 years. It was a symphony of domestic bliss, a life I had carefully built with my husband, Mark. We had the house in the suburbs with the perfect lawn, 2 beautiful kids, Lily and Sam, and what I thought was a rock-solid marriage. Mark was a successful consultant, always busy, always providing. I was a freelance graphic designer, but I'd scaled back my work significantly to raise the kids. It was our agreement. He builds the empire, I build the home. I thought we were a team. I was a fool. The day my world shattered didn't start with a bang. It started with a quiet, sterile conversation over the kitchen island he'd just had installed. Lily and Sam were at school. I was sketching a logo for a small client, and Mark, who was supposed to be on a conference call, was just standing there, staring at me with an unnerving calm. He cleared his throat. "Clara," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth, "we need to talk. I've spoken to an attorney. I'm filing for divorce." Just like that. No argument, no final straw, just a business decision. My pen clattered onto the quartz countertop. I felt the air leave my lungs, replaced by a cold, sharp dread. "What? Mark, what are you talking about? We just got back from Italy for our anniversary. You told me you'd never been happier." He'd said it under the Tuscan sun, holding my hand with a sincerity that I now realized was a world-class performance. He shrugged, a gesture so dismissive it felt like a physical blow. "Things change, Clara. People grow apart. This is for the best." He then proceeded to lay out his generous offer. I could have the house, but I'd have to take over the considerable mortgage payments. I could have the minivan. He would provide a sum for child support that barely covered the cost of groceries and their after-school activities. He presented it all on a single sheet of paper, printed out from his lawyer's office. It was a severance package, not a division of a life we built together. "Mark, this is nothing," I stammered, my eyes blurring with tears. "Your business alone is worth millions. We built that together. I supported you. I handled everything at home so you could focus on it." He gave me a pitying look, the kind you'd give a naive child. "The business is in my name, Clara. It's complex. You wouldn't understand the finances. My lawyer says this is more than fair. Honestly, you should just take it. A court battle will be messy and expensive, and you'll end up with less." It was a threat wrapped in a condescending bow. He was counting on me to be scared, to be ignorant, and to fold. That night, after crying until my head throbbed, I called the one person I knew would be ruthlessly logical, my brother, Leo. Leo is the quiet one in our family. While I was the creative, emotional one, he was the one who loved numbers, puzzles, and order. He's always been brilliant but socially awkward. Mark used to call him the calculator behind his back, a nickname that was both mocking and, as it would turn out, prophetically accurate. "He's trying to screw you, Clara," Leo said, his voice flat and steady over the phone. I could hear the clicking of his keyboard in the background. "He thinks you're a pushover because you don't live and breathe spreadsheets." "What do I do, Leo? I can't afford a high-powered lawyer like his. He's going to leave me with nothing." There was a pause, and the keyboard clicking stopped. "You're not going to have nothing," Leo said, and for the first time I heard a sliver of something dangerous in his tone. "You're going to have me. Send me everything you have. The last 5 years of tax returns, bank statements, credit card bills, everything." Did he ever mention what I do for a living? I thought back. Mark had met Leo a dozen times. He knew Leo was an accountant. He just said you were some kind of accountant for a big firm downtown. Leo let out a short, dry laugh. "Close. I'm a forensic accountant. Companies hire me when they think their top executives are embezzling millions and hiding it in offshore accounts. Finding where a suburban consultant is stashing his assets, that's like a vacation for me." Hope, fierce and bright, ignited in my chest for the first time in 24 hours. The next day, I gathered a mountain of paperwork. As I handed the box over to Leo, I felt a pang of guilt. These were our private lives, laid bare in numbers and transactions. But then I remembered the coldness in Mark's eyes, and the guilt vanished. When Mark came by to pick up some of his things, he saw the box of files on the table. "What's all that?" he asked with a smirk. "Just getting my finances in order," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Good. Don't forget to call your brother, the numbers guy. Maybe he can help you budget." He laughed, a cruel, arrogant sound that echoed in our once happy home. He had absolutely no idea who he was up against. For 2 days, I heard nothing from Leo, but the occasional text asking for a password or to clarify a date. I was a nervous wreck, jumping every time my phone buzzed. Then, on the 3rd night, he called. It was nearly midnight. "Clara," he said, his voice low and intense, "I'm looking at your 2021 tax return. Mark declared a significant capital loss from a failed investment in a tech startup called Innovatech Dynamics. He told the IRS it went bankrupt." "I remember that," I said. He was devastated. He said we lost almost $100,000. We had to cancel our vacation to Hawaii. He made such a big deal about how we had to tighten our belts for a year. The line went silent for a long, heavy moment. I could hear Leo's furious typing, the keys clicking like a Geiger counter near a radiation leak. "Clara," he said finally, his voice tight as a wire, "I have a question for you, and it's very important. Do you remember Mark's business trip to the Cayman Islands last year? The one he said was a horribly boring corporate retreat?" My blood ran cold. I remembered it perfectly. He'd complained for weeks beforehand. He brought back tacky souvenirs for the kids and a story about a terrible sunburn. "Yes," I whispered. "Why?" "Because," Leo said, his voice dropping to an icy calm that chilled me to the bone. "Innovatech Dynamics didn't go bankrupt. It didn't exist. It was a shell corporation. And Mark wasn't at a corporate retreat. He was opening a bank account under that company's name. An account that, as of this morning, holds just over $2 million. The phone felt like a block of ice pressed against my ear. $2 million. The words echoed in the silent house, bouncing off the walls of the life he had systematically dismantled. The canceled trip to Hawaii wasn't a sacrifice. It was a celebration of his deception. The belt-tightening wasn't a necessity. It was theater. And I was the unwitting audience of one. Every consoling hug, every shared complaint about our financial bad luck was a lie. I felt a wave of nausea so profound I had to grip the kitchen counter to stay upright. "Clara? Are you there?" Leo's voice cut through the static in my head. "I'm here," I choked out, my voice a ragged whisper. "Leo, what does this mean?" "It means the game has changed," he said, his tone shifting from clinical analyst to protective older brother. He's not just undervaluing assets, he's actively, criminally hiding them. This is fraud, tax evasion. We've got him, Clara, but you have to be smart about this. You can't let him know that you know, not yet. Rage, hot and pure, burned away the shock. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call Mark and unleash 12 years of fury on him. I wanted to see the look on his face when his perfectly constructed world came crashing down. He wants me to sign his pathetic offer by Friday, I seethed. He thinks I'm just going to roll over. And that's exactly what you're going to make him believe, Leo instructed, his voice firm. You're going to play the part of the distraught, overwhelmed, slightly clueless wife. You're going to cry. You're going to tell him you need a few more days to think, that you need to talk to a lawyer, but you don't know where to start. You will be everything he expects you to be. Every ounce of his arrogance is a weapon we can use against him. Can you do that for me? I took a deep, shaky breath. Acting. My whole marriage had been an act, only I didn't know I was the only one not reading from a script. Yes, I said, a newfound steel hardening my voice. I can do that. The next 2 days were the longest of my life. Mark came over to pick up the kids for a dinner out, a transparent attempt to look like the good dad. He found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, looking lost. It was the role of a lifetime. "Still trying to make sense of it all?" he asked, a note of condescending sympathy in his voice. He placed a hand on my shoulder, and it took every fiber of my being not to flinch away. I looked up at him, letting my eyes well up with manufactured tears. "Mark, I don't understand any of this. The mortgage, the taxes, your offer. I don't know if I can afford to keep the house for the kids." He sighed, the picture of a patient man dealing with a difficult woman. "Clara, I told you it's a very generous offer, more than you'd get in court. My lawyer, Richard, he's the best. He said a judge would see that my business is a separate entity. You don't want to go down that road, trust me." "I know," I sniffled, dabbing my eyes with a tissue. "I just need a little more time. I guess I need to find a lawyer of my own." He smiled, a tight, satisfied little smile. "Of course. Take your time. Just don't hire some small-town hack who fills you with false hope. It'll only cost you more in the end." He was practically feeding me my lines. He squeezed my shoulder, a gesture of ownership, not comfort, and then left with the kids, whistling. The moment the door clicked shut, my tears of sorrow turned to tears of cold fury. Leo had already given me a name. Not a small-town hack. Her name was Anastasia Davenport, and her firm occupied the top 2 floors of a skyscraper downtown. She was known in legal circles as the Shark, a woman who specialized in high-asset divorces, particularly those involving financial fraud. Walking into her office felt like entering a different world. It was all glass and steel, with a panoramic view of the city. Anastasia was in her late 50s, impeccably dressed, with eyes that seemed to see right through you. I told her everything, my voice shaking at first, then growing stronger as I laid out Mark's deception. I slid the folder Leo had prepared across the vast mahogany desk. It contained bank statements, tax returns, and the damning printouts from the Cayman Islands Bank. She listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. She scanned the documents, her sharp eyes missing nothing. When she finally looked up, a slow, predatory smile spread across her face. "Mr. Harris has made a classic and very foolish mistake," she said, her voice smooth as silk but with an edge of tempered steel. "He underestimated you, and he has no idea your brother is a bloodhound. This isn't just a divorce anymore, Clara. This is a recovery operation." She tapped the printout of the offshore account. $2 million is a nice start, but in my experience, men who do this once do it multiple times. There's more. There's always more. She was right. That night, Leo called again. His voice was different. The calm, logical tone was gone, replaced by something grim. "I've been digging into the transaction history of the Innovatec account," he said, skipping the pleasantries. "He hasn't just been letting the money sit there, he's been moving it. There are a series of structured withdrawals, small amounts, always under the $10,000 reporting threshold." "What for?" I asked, my stomach twisting into a knot. "I wasn't sure at first. They're going to a property management company in Miami," Leo explained. "So I did some digging on the property they manage. It's a luxury beachfront condo. I pulled the public deed records, Clara. It was purchased 18 months ago, all cash." "In his name?" I breathed, my mind racing. Another secret asset. There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. When Leo finally spoke, his voice was heavy with a sorrow he couldn't hide. "No, Clara," he said softly. "It's not in his name, it's in hers. The deed is registered to a woman named Amelia Choi." Amelia Choi. The name hung in the air, a foreign, dissonant chord in the melody of my life. It felt like a name from a movie, not one connected to my suburban reality, to the man I shared a bed with for over a decade. I sank into a chair, the phone slick in my sweaty palm. My mind scrambled, trying to place her. A client? A colleague? The name was a blank slate. "Leo." "Who is she?" I whispered, afraid of the answer. "I'm working on it," he replied, his voice a low growl. The sound of his keyboard was frantic now, a storm of clicks and taps. Social media is a goldmine for egos like your husband's. People can't resist bragging. While he hunted, my mind reeled. A beachfront condo, all cash. The lies piled on top of each other, forming a mountain so vast I couldn't see the top. The stress at work, the late nights at the office, the boys' weekends he took to decompress. It was all a lie. He wasn't working late. He was building a second life. He wasn't decompressing. He was living a fantasy on the money he was stealing from our family, from our children. The fury returned, a white-hot inferno that burned away my grief. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a woman on a mission. This wasn't just about the money. It was about the years he'd stolen, the trust he'd vaporized, the mockery he'd made of our marriage. "Got her," Leo said abruptly. His voice was grim. "She's younger, a lot younger. She's a lifestyle influencer, whatever the hell that means. Her Instagram is public. I'm sending you a link. Brace yourself." My phone chimed. With a trembling finger, I clicked the link. An Instagram profile loaded, Amelia Choi. She was stunningly beautiful, with the kind of effortless glamour that takes a lot of effort and money to maintain. Her feed was a curated highlight reel of a life I couldn't even imagine. Here she was, posing on the balcony of a high-rise condo, the turquoise Miami ocean sparkling behind her. My condo, our condo, the condo purchased with the money Mark said we'd lost. I scrolled through the photos, my heart pounding a sick rhythm against my ribs. There she was, sipping champagne on a yacht, wearing a designer bikini, lounging by a pool that looked like it belonged to a 5-star resort. And then I saw it, a photo from 18 months ago. She was holding up a set of keys, beaming, in front of a familiar-looking front door. The caption read, "New chapter. Huge thanks to my amazing man for making my dreams come true. Miami life, Cinta blessed Diku dream home." My breath hitched. I scrolled through the comments, a sea of congratulations and heart emojis. And there, buried among them, was a comment from a private account with the username MH Consulting, Mark's business account. The comment was simple, a single red heart emoji. It was a digital breadcrumb, a tiny, arrogant admission of guilt, but it was the next photo that shattered me completely. It was a photo dump from a trip to Italy last year. The same month Mark and I had gone for our anniversary. He had claimed he needed to fly to Rome for a 2-day emergency meeting in the middle of our trip. I'd been disappointed, but understanding. He was always so busy. In the photos, Amelia was posing in front of the Colosseum, eating gelato by the Trevi Fountain, raising a glass of wine on a terrace overlooking the Amalfi Coast. And in the reflection of her oversized sunglasses in one of the selfies, I could just make out the distorted image of the man taking the picture. It was Mark. He hadn't gone to a meeting. He'd taken her on a romantic getaway, mere miles from where I was waiting for him. He'd been living a double life in parallel on the same continent. "Clara." Leo's voice was soft, pulling me back from the abyss. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be," I said, my voice eerily calm. The storm of emotion had passed, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. "This is a gift. He's arrogant, he's sloppy, and he thinks I'm an idiot." I immediately forwarded the link to Anastasia. Her reply came in minutes. "The fool, the utter glorious fool. He bought his mistress a condo with marital assets laundered through an illegal offshore account. Clara, this is the nail in his coffin. He won't just lose the divorce, he's facing prison time." The plan was set. We would let Mark continue to believe he was in control. Anastasia filed a standard, non-threatening response to his initial divorce petition, buying us time. The official document was meek, asking for a fair assessment of assets but raising no major alarms. Unofficially, she was preparing a nuclear bomb. She hired a private investigator in Miami to document Amelia's life in the condo and to run a full background check on her. Leo, meanwhile, was falling deeper down the rabbit hole of Mark's finances. He was a man possessed, fueled by coffee and a cold fury on my behalf. A week later, Mark called. His voice was smug. "I saw your lawyer's response. It's reasonable. See? I told you this didn't have to be ugly. So, have you thought about my offer? Let's get this signed and move on with our lives." "I'm still thinking, Mark," I said, channeling the hesitation Leo had coached me on. "It's a big decision." "Clara, don't drag this out. It's the best you're going to get. Just sign the papers, for the kids' sake." The casual way he weaponized our children sent a fresh jolt of anger through me. "Okay," I said, feigning resignation. "Okay, Mark, I'll sign. Can we meet at your lawyer's office on Friday?" I could almost hear his triumphant grin through the phone. "Perfect. I'll have Richard draw up the final documents. You're doing the right thing, Clara." The next few days were a blur of preparation. Anastasia, Leo, and I had a final strategy meeting. Leo had found more, so much more. It turned out the Innovatech Dynamics account wasn't the only one. He'd found 2 more shell corporations, one in Panama and another in Switzerland, with smaller but still significant sums of money. He'd traced payments for luxury watches, 5-star hotel stays, and even a down payment on a sports car, all for Amelia. He'd built a timeline, a flowchart of deception so detailed and undeniable it was a work of art. Friday arrived. I dressed carefully, not in a power suit, but in a simple dress, something soft and unassuming. I looked like the grieving wife he expected. I walked into the conference room at his lawyer's firm. Mark was already there, sitting beside Richard, a slick, silver-haired man with a shark's smile. They both stood up, their expressions a mixture of pity and impatience. "Clara, thank you for coming," Richard said, gesturing to the chair opposite them. "We have the settlement agreement right here. A few signatures, and this can all be behind you." He slid a thick document across the polished table. Mark leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms, the picture of a man who had won. He didn't even look at me. He just stared at the papers, waiting for my surrender. I took a deep breath. I picked up the pen, and then the door to the conference room opened. Anastasia Davenport walked in, followed by a man in a crisp suit carrying a heavy briefcase. Mark's smile faltered. He shot a confused look at his lawyer. "Who are you?" Richard demanded, his voice sharp. "I'm Anastasia Davenport," she said, her voice filling the room with an authority that made both men sit up straighter. "I'm Mrs. Harris's legal counsel, and we'd like to propose a few small amendments to your generous offer." She placed her own briefcase on the table and snapped it open. She didn't pull out a legal pad. She pulled out a thick, spiral-bound binder and slid it across the table toward Mark. On the cover, in bold letters, was a single title, Project Hummingbird. Mark stared at the binder, his brow furrowed in confusion. "What is this?" "That," Anastasia said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper, "is the nickname my forensic accountant gave to your financial activities. Open it." Mark hesitated, then slowly opened the binder. The first page was a high-resolution, professionally taken photograph. It was the Miami condo building. On the balcony of the penthouse unit, waving cheerfully at the camera, was Amelia Choi, and standing next to her with his arm wrapped possessively around her waist was Mark. The silence in that conference room was absolute. It was so complete I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning and the frantic thumping of my own heart. The color drained from Mark's face, leaving a sickly, grayish pallor. His eyes were wide, fixed on the photograph, his mouth slightly agape. The mask of the confident, in-control husband had shattered, and in its place was the raw, panicked face of a man caught in a steel trap. His lawyer, Richard, leaned over to look, and his slick professional composure evaporated in an instant. He snatched the binder and flipped to the next page. It was a copy of the deed for the Miami condo, with Amelia Choi's name clearly visible. The next page was a flowchart meticulously crafted by Leo, showing the money trail from Mark's consulting business through the Innovatech Dynamics Shell Corporation in the Cayman Islands and directly to the all-cash purchase of the property. Arrows, dates, and account numbers formed an undeniable web of deceit. What is this nonsense?" Mark finally stammered, his voice a hoarse croak. He looked from the binder to me, a desperate, wild look in his eyes. He was searching for the bewildered, tearful wife he had left behind, but she was gone. In her place was a woman made of ice and fury. "That," Anastasia said, her voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel, "is what we call evidence. Page 4, I believe, details the Swiss account you opened under the name Apex Global Ventures. Page 5 outlines the Panamanian account. We particularly enjoyed the photo on page 7. Richard, whose face was now ashen, flipped to page 7. It was a crystal-clear copy of an expense receipt from a high-end jeweler in Rome for a diamond tennis bracelet. The date on the receipt was the second day of Mark's supposed emergency business meeting. The next photo was from Amelia Choi's Instagram feed, a close-up of her wrist, adorned with the very same bracelet. The caption read, "He spoils me." Mark slammed the binder shut. "This is an invasion of privacy. It's illegal," he spat, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. "Is it?" Anastasia purred, arching a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Everything in that binder was obtained through legal, public channels and expert financial analysis. Your mistake, Mr. Harris, wasn't just having an affair or hiding your assets. Your mistake was being so breathtakingly arrogant about it. You left a trail of digital breadcrumbs a child could follow. Luckily for my client, her brother isn't a child. He's one of the best forensic accountants in the country." For the first time, a flicker of comprehension crossed Mark's face as he thought of Leo. The calculator. The dismissive nickname now sounded like a death knell. He finally understood he hadn't been playing chess with a novice. He'd been blundering into a grandmaster's trap from the very first move. Richard, the lawyer, finally found his voice, attempting to regain control. "These are outrageous and unsubstantiated allegations. My client—" "Your client," Anastasia interrupted, her voice dropping to a deadly quiet, "has committed wire fraud, tax evasion, and perjury on his financial declarations. We have enough evidence here to not only ensure my client receives 100% of all known marital assets, including the full value of the hidden accounts and properties, but also to pique the interest of the Internal Revenue Service and potentially the Department of Justice. A messy court battle is the least of your worries right now." She let that hang in the air. The threat wasn't just about money anymore. It was about his freedom. The life he had so carefully constructed, both the one with me and the secret one with her, was about to be burned to the ground. Mark stared at me, his eyes pleading. "Clara, please, we can talk about this. Don't do this. Think about the kids." "I am thinking about the kids," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I'm thinking about the college funds you drained to buy your girlfriend a condo. I'm thinking about the vacations they missed so you could fly her to Italy. I am securing their future, a future you tried to steal from them." Anastasia slid a new document across the table. It was thicker than the first one. "This is our counteroffer," she announced. "It is not negotiable. Mrs. Harris will receive the house, mortgage-free. She will receive 75% of your declared liquid assets and your entire pension. She will receive 100% of the funds discovered in the offshore accounts, which will be transferred to a trust for the children. She will receive the full market value of the Miami property and the sports car. You will be responsible for all legal fees on both sides. You will also agree to a child support payment based on your true income, which we've calculated to be roughly 4 times what you declared. You will have until the end of the day to sign. If you don't, a copy of this binder," she patted Project Hummingbird affectionately, goes directly to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division on Monday morning. Mark looked like he had been physically struck. He sagged in his chair, all the fight gone out of him. He had walked in that room a king, ready to dictate the terms of my surrender. Now he was a cornered animal with nowhere left to run. Richard was furiously whispering in his ear, no doubt explaining just how catastrophic their position was. I stood up, my legs feeling steadier than they had in months. "I'll wait for your decision," I said, turning to leave with Anastasia. My part in the ambush was over. As I reached the door, Mark's voice, small and broken, called out my name. "Clara, how did you know? All of this? How did you even know where to look?" I paused at the door and turned back to face him, the man who had thought me too simple, too naive, too foolish to ever challenge him. I allowed myself a small, cold smile. "You said it yourself, Mark. You told me to call my brother, the numbers guy. So I did. He just asked me one simple question to get started." Mark looked up, a glimmer of desperate curiosity in his defeated eyes. What question?" I held his gaze, letting the silence stretch for a beat before delivering the final blow. "He asked me if your new personal assistant, the one you hired right out of college 18 months ago, was named Amelia Choi." Mark's face went slack, the last vestiges of his composure crumbling into dust. The puzzle pieces clicked into place in his mind with an audible crash. The personal assistant, the one he'd mentioned in passing, praising her efficiency and organizational skills. The one he had claimed was a godsend for handling his travel and scheduling. He had hired his mistress. He had put her on the company payroll, using our marital funds to pay the salary of the woman he was sleeping with, embedding her so deeply into his life that he'd become blind to the glaring, catastrophic risk. It wasn't just arrogance. It was a level of hubris so profound it bordered on insanity. He had thought himself untouchable, a master manipulator, but in reality, he was just a common, predictable cheat. He didn't need until the end of the day. Anastasia's phone rang before we had even reached the elevator. It was Richard. They would sign. They had no choice. The king had been checkmated. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal formalities. Mark was a ghost. He signed every paper put in front of him without a word, his face a permanent mask of grim defeat. He moved out of the house into a small rented apartment across town, the bare minimum required to maintain his visitation rights. The swagger was gone, replaced by the hunched shoulders of a broken man. He had lost everything, not just the money, but his reputation, his pride, and any shred of respect he might have salvaged. The money started to flow in. Huge wire transfers from banks in countries I'd only seen in movies appeared in the trust account Anastasia had set up for the kids. The deed to the house was signed over to me, the mortgage paid in full from one of Mark's newly discovered accounts. It felt surreal, like Monopoly money, but it was real. It was our money. It was my children's security reclaimed from the brink. One afternoon, I was sitting at the kitchen island, his kitchen island I used to think of it, but now it was mine, sorting through the mail. There was a postcard. It was from Miami. The picture on the front was of the very same beach I'd seen in Amelia's Instagram photos. I flipped it over. The handwriting was a loopy, immaculate script. "Dear Clara," it began, "you don't know me, but I feel I owe you an explanation, if not an apology. Mark told me you were already separated, that your marriage was a loveless business arrangement you were both too busy to dissolve. He told me you knew about me. He lied about everything. When the money stopped, when the lawyers called about the condo, I learned the truth. I hope you and your children have a wonderful life. You deserve it. Sincerely, Amelia." I read the postcard twice, then slowly tore it into tiny pieces and dropped it in the recycling bin. I didn't feel anger or pity for her. She was just another casualty of Mark's lies, a supporting character in his pathetic drama. His world was built on a foundation of deceit, and it was always destined to collapse. I was just the one who finally decided to kick out the load-bearing wall. My brother, Leo, became the quiet hero of our family. He never once said, "I told you so." When the final settlement was confirmed, I took him out to the most expensive steakhouse in the city. As we sat there, surrounded by the quiet hum of success, I raised my glass. "To the calculator," I said, my voice thick with emotion. He gave a rare, genuine smile. "I prefer Bloodhound," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "He was an amateur, Clara. He left a mess. It was almost too easy." "It didn't feel easy," I confessed. "It felt like I was at war." "You were," he said, his expression turning serious. "And you won. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small or ignorant again. You're the one who raised the alarm. I just pointed the cannon in the right direction." Life found a new rhythm, a better one. The house, once filled with a quiet tension I had refused to acknowledge, was now filled with laughter. Lily and Sam, shielded from the ugliest details, knew only that Daddy had made some bad choices and that things were better now. I started taking on more design clients, rediscovering my passion and my talent. My little freelance business began to grow into something real, something that was entirely mine. About a year later, I was in the grocery store when I saw him, Mark. He looked older, tired. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by a cheap-looking polo shirt. He was pushing a cart with a few frozen dinners inside. He saw me at the same time. For a moment, we just stood there, two strangers in the cereal aisle, the wreckage of our shared history between us. He opened his mouth to say something, then closed it. There was nothing to say. He just gave me a small, defeated nod, turned his cart, and walked away. I watched him go, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, not even a flicker of the love I once had for him. He was just a man who had tried to hide the assets, a man who didn't know my brother was a forensic accountant. He was a ghost from a past life, and I was finally, truly free. That evening, I was helping Sam with his math homework at the kitchen table. Lily was sketching beside us. The evening sun streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was a simple, perfect moment. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Leo. It was a link to a news article from the local business journal. The headline read, "Prominent local consultant Mark Harris indicted on federal tax evasion charges." I smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes. I turned my phone off and put it away. The final bill for Mark's arrogance had come due, but his story wasn't my story anymore. My story was here, in this sun-drenched kitchen, with my children, my work, and my hard-won peace. My life was finally my own, built not on lies, but on a foundation of truth and strength I never knew I had. And it was just beginning.